one of the points that I think in both the panels were kind of succinctly very raised were specifically that India or Pakistan or for Southeast Asia as an ecosystem never saw digital services before, right?
Yeah.
And in the last 20 years, we have transitioned towards digital services. Now, if you look at it at a value chain proposition, right? Why clone startups worked? That's the very fundamental question that we need to ask. Like, how can we just ascribe a certain model that worked in the West and just took it here and it worked, right? That happened because initially there was no service and we were only capitalizing on the top set, which were already global users, which new platforms which were global, which were already using internet. So the clone startup actually penetrated the ecosystem, created value for the top 10% or 7% or 13%, right? But that was already that was also a very huge base. And that's why you would see that even those startups in the volumes of country like India and Pakistan still were able to make billion-dollar companies, right? But slowly and steadily, what we realized is that the great unlocking or unbundling of value would fundamentally happen once we penetrate even more deeper and we go towards the 90% segment, because that 90% spends like 90% of our GDP, right? Because that 10% is a very small percentage, right? They hold a lot of wealth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every person in volume effectively invests that amount of money. So that is when we went deeper and looked into the geographical, the cultural, the psychographic ways of building products, like the Ola in India, the Flipkart in India, right? At a business model level, at a product level, you would see them very similar, right?
Yeah.
They're similar to Amazon, but fundamentally the nuances, the small nuances that you build, like coming up with cash on delivery, that was something that was invented with Flipkart, right? So that is where it is happening. And now we have fundamentally realized that the next unbundling of value is going to happen in China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. These are the places where the next, because majority of population is here, right?
Yeah.
That is where the next unbundling of value, and we are doing great strides like Razorpay coming in, BYJU'S coming in. Then in Pakistan, multiple. I am an avid follower of SadaPay.
Yeah.
I really like what they're doing. They're very design centric, so I really
Yeah.
like that. But Jugnu doing a great job, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that is going to happen, and that is how effectively we build the next Silicon Valley in our Asia region. We are not just the back burners of technical products that we say that we have a back center India and Pakistan, but rather we will be at the forefront of it, building global products which will be used in the West. Two examples: TikTok and Shein.
Yeah.
Shein is a great product out of China, and it's just amazing, right?
I think Bangalore is almost already there in terms of the next Silicon Valley. We have a question.
Session in Bangalore. Why don't we do the next session? And you're all invited, right?
It's a dream of mine to visit India, honestly. It's truly. And hopefully we can, in our lifetime, we'll have to have one session in person. And we can have that across the borders, both in India and in Pakistan.
Absolutely.
So आप आए तो हम थोड़े आपको थोड़ा कराची लाहौर भी तो घुमाएं.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, मेरा तो बहुत मन है. मैं वैसे भी अहमद फराज साहब का बहुत बड़ा फैन रह चुका हूँ, तो मैं देखना चाहूंगा कि वो कहाँ रहते थे. जॉन एलिया साहब, तो ये नुसरत साहब कहाँ रहते थे, उनकी कहानियां सुन के मैं बड़ा हुआ हूँ. तो खैर.
John, we have one question for you. We're going to sort of touch the EdTech session in a minute, but वो सवाल है कि how do you see EdTech being adopted by the lower strata of society, say lower middle class of a farmer's children, etc.?
Yeah. So I think 2-3 ways where I feel that EdTech is going to become really dynamic, how it disrupts the education ecosystem. The education ecosystem across the globe is like a $7 trillion industry, organized and unorganized, right? And in the organized segment, EdTech is just $400 billion. Yeah. That's like not even 5% of the total education industry, right? Now, what we have effectively seen is that education in India and Pakistan, or for that matter at any place, is not solving infrastructure. EdTech is not solving infrastructure. That can only be done by governments, right? If they invest a lot of money in. So what are they solving fundamentally? They're solving access. Like if like Abdul is a very good speaker, we would put him on the board and there are 1,000 people who are actually seeing him. So that's going to be amazing anyway. But yeah, so 1,000, and you effectively democratize that kind of education to the lower strata. So 2-3 things are very important. Like the first thing is having very low bandwidth quality access to internet, and that is something we have seen major investments like Geo has invested like $20 billion. It was the largest fundraise, right? That is happening. The second thing that is happening is EdTech is becoming more horizontally integrated. What I mean by that is there were independent use cases which were solved by independent teachers. Like your tuition teacher used to solve something. Then in a coaching center, there would be a doubt session that was independent, right? Then there will be exam that would be independent. And that was typically used to happen in discrete buckets, right? We are trying to build a close-knit ecosystem bucket in which somebody just enters the ecosystem and comes out with a use case. Like, I want to get into the best university in Pakistan, right? That's my use case. My use case is not to just get my doubt solved or learn a certain concept. So how do you horizontally integrate that? And the third most important behavior is that education is always treated as something in which you kind of improve or level up in life, right? So it's more like a FOMO driven industry where you feel agar tum nahi padhoge yaar to tumhari achhi naukri nahi lagegi, to put it in a very simple manner. But now education is moving towards learning for fun, right? Yeah. Which kind of supplements the passion economy. कि तुम्हें मजा आने लग गया मैथ्स में या प्रोडक्ट मैनेजमेंट में तो तुम अगले स्वैग वाले पीएम बन सकते हो. That is how I would want to put it. So these three things which are very important, like low bandwidth, high quality access. Second is then the horizontal integration of use cases, and third is learning for fun. And that is what is going to rapidly develop in the next 10 years. And it's going to be $1 trillion industry in the next 5 years, for sure.
I have so many follow-up questions, but I'm keeping it for the EdTech session. ताकि ऐसा ना हो कि सारी बातें अभी हम कर लें उसके बाद we will like there's nothing. Obviously, this is something that we can go on for hours and hours and not end, but just so that we can have these kind of exactly this kind of insight for everyone that sort of returns for the session. Apart from that, we also have a few kind of comments. Would love to hear some Urdu shairi from Shravan. So Mona Shah is requesting Shravan that
I'll do a +1 for that.
तो यार तो एक शेर है जो कि मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है, जो मुझे हमेशा बहुत इंस्पायर करता है. तो शेर कुछ ऐसा है कि तकदीर का शिकवा बेमानी, तकदीर का शिकवा बेमानी, जीना ही तुझे मंजूर नहीं, जीना ही तुझे मंजूर नहीं, तकदीर का शिकवा बेमानी, जीना ही तुझे मंजूर नहीं, आप अपना मुकद्दर बन ना सकें इतना भी कोई मजबूर नहीं.
I'm thinking कि अगला घंटा ना प्रोडक्ट को बाहर थोड़ा सा राइट
करते हैं, अब फिर ब्रेक बढ़ा देते हैं,
शायरी सुनते हैं. बिल्कुल.
Let's have one session on Urdu शायरी.
बिल्कुल.
Mohammed Saran, wow. We have one more question. Do you think post-COVID virtual learning will scale up, or we will be back to classrooms?
I think it's going to be blended learning. I think paradigm shifts happen in a way. See, the whole point of COVID was not that people flocked to digital solutions. It's also they figured out the value of digital solutions, right? So, जैसे पहले तुम digital solution पे तुम जबरदस्ती आए, like you came on Zoom, but you realized on Zoom I can play games, right? Which is not possible in a real-time class, right? And that is something that you can learn through. So once you kind of realize the value, then you would never come, because value brings retention. It's like a mental model, right? If you are already there, if you give value, people will not move from that value and go back to the previous solution. So it's going to be blended for sure, but ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा कि universities नहीं काम करेंगी, क्योंकि human connect बहुत ज़्यादा important.
Yeah, agreed. Shared economy is vanishing nowadays, and rental economy is replacing it. I think that's like an entire huge sort of module to touch upon, and अगर हम अभी इससे बात करेंगे तो हमारे next session पे time नहीं रहेगा. So we have someone, Sanan, requesting, can someone send me Sean Masala? Of course. Would love to hear someone from Cred on disrupting finance. Their product strategy seems to be the other way around.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think this is just like one start of many more sessions to come, and hopefully we can have a longer, just not just a topic on finance, but subtopics on finance, which in themselves warrant hours and hours of discussion and conversation. All right, so let's wait for the next 2 minutes and for our panelists to join in, and then we can kickstart the session. Strain on eyes while having to study on digital medium, your comments. But that's also a problem, right? Like being able to sort of stuck indoor has kind of resulted in if I'm in front of a screen 15, 16 hours a day, then, and I'm sure you probably are in 24 hours a day, that probably has led to and right now we are still in our professional journey, but especially for kids in their very early stages of developing and learning. So how does that kind of play in?
So I think we are moving towards that. That's also a very relevant thing, because the construct of any product specifically is moving towards relevant engagement. It's not just engagement, right? So that is the reason majority of the players like Apple and other companies, they specifically put focus on those lines, that if you're using if you're using an app or any digital platform for a particular use case, which is entertainment, so can I just prompt you that you're not spending too much time over there, right? So it kind of curates your quality of consumption, which is very relevant for you, and simultaneously it takes care of the fact that you're moving away from the digital fatigue that you see. That's one. That's just like the immediate solution. But the long-term solution is something that's implemented in South Korea, where where we are moving towards AR, VR solutions, where it actually feels like you're in the class instead of kind of sitting in front of a strict screen. So probably that are just two of the many ways it's going to happen.
Right. Thank you. So we have all of our speakers and panelists join in. I'll very quickly start with introducing all of our speakers. If you guys can, when I sort of introduce you, just wave in front of the camera so that our audience knows who you are. I'll start with Shravan. I think Shravan has been introduced, but for those joining us right now, Shravan is a principal product manager at BYJU'S. BYJU'S is India's biggest EdTech platform, amassing over 80 million users. He's also an educator and runs his YouTube channel by the name of Swagwala PM, and the co-founder of Product Tree, which is one of India's largest product communities. We have Dr. Farah Arif also on on our panel. Dr. Farah is a professor of marketing at leading Pakistani institutions like UMT and LUMS. She's also the founder and CEO at EdTech Works. EdTech Works is an experiential learning platform that offers online digital products for business education, mainly targeting university students and corporate executives. We also have Fahad Tanveer, co-founder and CEO of EdCasa. EdCasa is Pakistan's leading EdTech startup, which help high school students prepare for their exams online every day in a fun, interactive way by providing personalized lesson offerings. And lastly, we have Aditya Kaushal. Aditya is an ex-product manager at Jurica. He's a senior product manager at Hiration. And Hiration is basically helping job seekers find new jobs globally, and they optimize and manage their professional identities via creation of resumes and just helping them find jobs, etc., etc. Now, just to lay down the context of the conversation ahead of us, both Pakistan and India have an education problem. Pakistan has the second highest number of out-of-school children. And similarly, India's higher education system does not have the capacity to achieve enrollment ratios anywhere close to those of other middle-income economies like that of Brazil and China. But both these countries also have two of the youngest population. Being able to educate and upskill this surging youth presents tremendous opportunity for both countries' economic growth and modernization. And we've already started to see India reap great benefits of their initial investment in their workforce. So I'll start with you, Shravan. And how have EdTech platforms led innovation to disrupt the traditional learning model to build a more interactive experience with personalized learning algorithms that allow their services to adapt to each user's pace and needs?
Correct. So it's a very interesting question, Abdul. So the way I look at it is that education as a very fundamental problem has two aspects to it, right? The first aspect is infra and the second is access, right? Now, infra as a core solution cannot be fundamentally solved without government intervention, right? The government has to intervene, build schools, supplement a lot of ecosystem changes that has to happen. But the other thing, which is kind of still a problem with us, was access, right? How do you effectively bring the higher quality teachers on a platform where a lot of students from a lot of backgrounds, multiple diverse backgrounds, multiple income channels are effectively able to kind of get that across? So that is where I think the EdTech revolution kind of started in India, where we wanted to democratize high quality teaching. It was primarily because of two reasons, right? The first reason primarily was that India, Pakistan, or if you look at Southeast Asia, education is more like a level up in life. It is more like a game changer for you, right? So people are really wanting to study and they want to get into the premier institutions like IITs, IIMs, and other institutes, which was not possible for someone in a tier 3 town to think about it, right? So that was the first thing, but people spend a lot of money over there. So if you see that with the advent of internet, the supplementary education sector, which is the tuition sector, has grown like 5x in the last 5 years. And it's about to hit like $60 billion in the next 2-3 years from the current $20 billion. So that is where EdTech solutions have come in, primarily focused on low income, low internet bandwidth. That is where we have tried to build those solutions across. Also, the secondary part is that education was always seen something like a fear of missing out kind of a process, because parents always thought if their children did not study, right, they'll never be able to make the most out of it. But that didn't necessarily translate into different career choices, right? Because most students were pushed into either engineering, doctorate, or multiple other professions, which are like widely accessible to us, right? But what happened as EdTech became more personalized, more adaptive, more engaging, the learning for fun attitude started coming in, right? So students started liking mathematics as something they want to study, right? And once that happened, by the age of 12, there are a lot of people who are exploring other options, that I want to do a PhD in mathematics. I want to do something else in mathematics, right? Why do I want to be an engineer? So it has eventually moved India to a passion-driven economy. And I think that is the case with Pakistan also, and other startups in Bangladesh also. I've kind of been fortunate to talk to them. So these are the two big changes that EdTech has fundamentally brought, and that is why it's rapidly growing as an economy, and we are rapidly innovating to bring more and more engaging educational context to users. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Dr. Farah,